friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sasha. Today I'm back with another book review. I did eat breakfast, have coffee, and get dressed, but I am not feeling well today, so I feel like my brain power is going to be exactly the same as if I had just woken up, turned on my camera, and did a book review. So let's keep that in mind as we move into my review of A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. Editing Sasha here. Before we begin the rest of the video, we're going to take a quick pause to hear a word from our sponsor. Hey there friends, it's me, Sasha, and today's sponsor is my Etsy shop, Dreaming of Stars Co. Have you ever wished you could match the vibe of your favorite book to a bookmark? Have you ever started reading a book but wanted to take a break and realized there was nothing close by except the last receipt from your library to use to hold your place? Hey, we're here to listen. We don't judge. Whether it's dark romance, queer, indie, fantasy, sci-fi, nonfiction, we've got bookmark designs just for you. And when I say we, it's really just me, but the we makes it sound, you know, official or something. All my bookmarks are made right here in this very room by me, myself, Sasha Marie. You can use code WELCOME10 on your first order for a discount. Thank you so much for watching. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Because I'm not feeling the best, I'm also not going to be holding up the book like I normally do. It's just going to be behind me so you can see it. I am a huge vampire fan. I have been since I grew up. I was a Twilight girly. I'm not afraid to admit it, although I can recognize all of its problems as an adult. Twilight led me into Dracula by Bram Stoker. Twilight led me into Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. Probably things a young teenager shouldn't have been reading, but alas, I was, and I devoured every sort of vampire thing I could find. I did Academy of Vampires by Rochelle Mead. I was just into it as a concept, into it as a genre, just like so thrilled with these mythical creatures that I thought were so cool and so sexy and wanted to be one so bad. And here we are. I'm now, I don't know if it's clear or not, but I'm clearly an adult now, and I decided to pick up A Dowry of Blood, which I was told was a sort of retelling of Dracula through one of his bride's points of view. That alone was extremely intriguing. Anytime you can sort of tell the same story but from a totally new perspective, I get really excited to see what the author will do. One of my absolute favorite things that this book does is it talks to us directly, but we are not the intended audience. The other thing it does so well is it never mentions Dracula's name one time. Dracula is the understood you in the story. He's also referred to as him, and the whole time the wife Constantana, I don't know how you pronounce her name. The wife is sort of retelling her experience to him, but we learn from like the very first page that he's already dead. So the whole writing experience and reading experience was so different and such a breath of fresh air of anything I've been reading recently. And it also was so fun to see all of these different time periods from her perspective and watch how vampires evolve and settle as years and hundreds of years go by. We really get to watch not just her journey specifically as she goes from a very young, teenage, naive girl into, she obviously physically stays the same, but like 100-year-old woman who has experienced so much. And there's no point in these books where these characters think that they are the good guys. This is definitely a book full of villains where each villain has its own sort of potentially redeeming quality, and some of them have zero redeeming qualities. I also want to mention some really big trigger warnings for this book. There is these words happening throughout, and it can be extremely re-traumatizing to read through and reading from this character's perspective of questioning how she can still love him when he is the one creature on this planet who has the power to hurt her the most and who uses that power over and over and over again. It's a place I'm very familiar with being, and I was just waiting to see her evolution from what was at one point just jealousy transform into its final form and its true form of just anger. And that was something that was really unexpected about this novel, was that there was such a huge undercurrent of jealousy. And I don't know why I didn't think that this would be part of it. I thought this would just be like Dracula and her. But obviously, like, he has wives plural. Like, that's always kind of canon and just understood. So I don't know why I didn't think we would be dealing with that. Like, watching this young girl, even as she's like 100 years old, have to navigate the man she's in love with, forging her consent to bring other people into their relationship and into their family. It was a very interesting sort of, again, this is me not feeling well and me not having good words to use. It was a very interesting look at poly relationships and dynamics, and anything that involved Dracula was a horrible example of consent and communication, because he just bulldozes over everyone, and he's so many steps ahead that by the time they get to whatever he's planned, it's sort of like he's made it their idea all along when they had no idea this was coming. So when it comes to him creating his family, he does it horribly. That is not good poly representation, but I was really pleased that we get a sort of epilogue at the end that is a good representation of how polydynamics can work well, with communication being key as well as consent of all parties being key. This story, from the very beginning to the very end, is bloody and gory, and there's some body trauma and body horror happening. And I don't know if it's because I've been reading stories like this since I was so many years younger. It really didn't bother me at all. There was no point where I got squeamish or no point where I was like, this is too much. I was just like, this is on par for a vampire story. And the other thing I loved about the fact that we didn't have a name for the male main character vampire, you could sort of insert any vampire from the lore and cultural canon into that position, and it fit so well. I kept thinking of Lestat from Interview with a Vampire for some of the scenes, especially when jealousy is involved and the cruelty of like murdering to make a point, and it was just like the unhinged, deranged nature of these creatures. And that's another thing we got to watch. So not only do we get to watch them from like their vampire undead birth all the way through to their settling, you get to see what qualities they had as a human sometimes soil or dampen their vampire nature and instincts, because not every transition is a positive one. Obviously there's like the honeymoon phase where they're all excited and just like the hunger, the world, everything's new, and also Dracula hasn't like chained them into the house yet. He's still like pretending that everything's fine and letting them out in society. But then once they start to settle a little bit, you get to find out what parts of their human nature are now being repressed and how that can negatively affect them as vampires. And I thought that was such a brilliant little like study in human nature and vampire nature, and just like the whole book itself is following the rise and fall of all of these empires and the politics of the wealthy, or if you live long enough you get to influence all of these different cultures and religions, and the influence and power that comes with having influence and power. It was just like, it was so many things happening in this book at once. It was incredible. I think first and foremost, the trauma of being in that sort of relationship and trying to unpack it all, and especially the huge transition from being a human to a vampire and unpacking that as well. And then just knowing that everything since the moment of your death has been a lie is really an interesting concept. And then, like, are you strong enough to unpack that safely? Are you strong enough to not fall apart? And gosh, it was just commentary on so many things, and I had such a good time with this book. I did see when I was adding it into my spreadsheet that it's listed as part of a series. So I don't know if and when we're going to be getting the second one. That's very intriguing to me. But I had a really good time with this, and I would really like to see what happens with the sort of like poly dynamic that we have forming in the epilogue and see where that goes. So I would say if you're looking to this book to get good poly representation, this probably isn't the right place to start. I would hope people coming into this book aren't introduced to poly relationships through this group of characters. I would hope that they had a better understanding of it going in, because I could see myself reading this when I was younger and I don't think I would be open to it at all, though, when I was younger. I was very much a different person. So anyway, that's my little tangent. I had a very good time with this book. I do recommend it. However, big trigger warnings. I do think this can be very triggering for many people. And I really loved this story, and I loved this take that we're getting to see different sides of this coin, because I think it can be so easy to forget that Dracula is an evil character. Like, when I'm reading his book, I'm kind of rooting for him, even though he's killing people and, like, being terrible. It's kind of fun to root for him, but then in the way that it's told in this book, oh my god, I hated him. I hated him so much, and I was so happy with how things worked out at the end. So that's my review. I'm gonna stop rambling. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys next time. Goodbye!